There are only a few comedians that have managed to create a fan following as huge as Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle has been a prominent figure in Hollywood after his rise to fame following The Chappelle's Show. But like everything, fame too comes at a price. The giants in the industry don't like any artist achieving too much fame or success, and to keep their power, they will do anything to bring the artist down.
Dave Chappelle was decapitated in front of us.
Dave Chappelle has seen the good and the ugly side of Hollywood, and he has a few stories to tell about what really goes on behind the scenes. One thing is for sure, Hollywood isn't as sparkling and glamorous as it appears from afar. And if there's anyone who always knew it, it was Dave. He knew all the money in the world wouldn't be enough compensation for what the Hollywood big bosses do to you.
It was so much money, how could you do that, and blah, blah, blah. But you know, if I had taken that money and finished the show, I would have got the money, but I might never have been the same.
Anyone who tries to stand against the elite gets bullied and maligned. And Dave Chappelle had his fair share of demeaning stories, where he was called names, and he had to watch his friends and well-wishers turn against him, like he recalls in this interview.
You know, and the drum beat is, he's crazy, he smokes crack, he's this, he's that. Yeah. It was a wild experience. The way people close to you react to it, like I had failed or I'd ruined my life.
But despite all these hardships and injustices, Dave has stood tall and became the voice against the Hollywood elites. Dave wasn't the only one who went through horrible treatment at the hands of his bosses, but he was the only one brave enough to stand up for himself. But what he didn't realize was that his enemy was a system built on hundreds of years of oppression. Who exactly is Dave Chappelle standing up against? And how far has he managed to come after all these years? You're about to hear the fantastic life and struggles of Dave Chappelle and his fight against the Hollywood big names. Dave versus Fox racist executives. Hollywood is known for its racist and discriminatory practices. Black actors have to fight twice as hard for the opportunities that other people easily get in the industry. Of course, it won't be easy to eliminate years and years of systemic oppression with just a few castings, especially since the higher powers still want to control everything.
According to Chappelle and Tolan, the executives at Fox suggested changing the lead female character from black to white.
Instead of being more inclusive of minorities and black people, the executives at Fox decided that it was the white people that needed more inclusion, and that too on a black man's show. According to Dave, he was the one who did everything for his Chappelle show.
You know, it was like, you gotta do everything. Yeah. I gotta write a show and do the show.
Despite this, he was ordered to change the lead cast of the show into a white woman. Dave wanted black representation on his show, and despite all his contribution towards the show, he was being excluded from such important decisions. The insistence to change the cast left Dave disgusted. After all, how many shows at the time had an all-white cast that no one had a problem with? But as soon as a black man made a show for his people, casting black people, suddenly the executives raised issues. Dave talked about this in an interview. They fly me out for a creative meeting. I'm in a room full of white people, and they proceed to tell me why we need more white people on the show so it can have a more universal appeal. Despite so many shows catering to white audiences, Dave was being asked to mold his show so that the white people could see themselves in it. This network built itself on black viewers, and what they're saying is white people are narcissistic. They don't want to watch black people, they want to watch themselves. It tells every black artist, no matter what you do, you need whites to succeed. I felt like I was beaten up and completely degraded. It's disgusting, and it made me want to vomit. Even the executive producer of the show, Peter Tolan, agreed with Dave's viewpoint. Fox Entertainment's racism had been a slap in the face for both Tolan and Dave. Tolan spoke about this openly and said, "We were trying to do a realistic depiction of Dave's life. Not a black show, but a smart, funny show that happened to be black. But Fox said there needs to be more white faces." Basically, Dave Chappelle cannot appear on Fox TV unless Whitey gets him in the door. It's embarrassing. And I realized I couldn't do it. I felt morally it was wrong. If the producer also didn't want these changes, then who did? This incident really opened Dave's eyes to what really goes on in the industry. and who is in control. Of course, the higher-ups at Fox Entertainment denied any such allegations. According to them, racism wasn't intended, and they were only making an innocent suggestion. The Fox network respects the unique perspective and integrity of each member of its audience, and to suggest anything less is disturbing and upsetting in light of our past, present, and future efforts. Dave was so disturbed by this incident that he did a special focusing on the issue of racism.
Traveling has made me a racism connoisseur, if you will. You know, it's different from region to region.
He's a comedian, and a great one, so he tackled the issue with humor and lighthearted fun. But bringing it up in the first place suggests that he was in fact very angry about it. Racism is rampant in Hollywood, and the executives and higher-ups have always played their part in making sure the imbalance remains. Dave was furious because after years of hard work and grit, he had landed his first opportunity, but the Hollywood elites ruined it for him only because of the color of his skin.
I can't believe someone did that to me.
People are just as angry as Dave, as some of them have taken to social media to highlight just how much Hollywood is responsible for racism in the industry. One Twitter user wrote, "Why do you think our people have just started to formally break into Hollywood, like en masse in 2019? Maybe it's because it's racism. This is racism. Natives have and continue to be held back actively in Hollywood from telling our stories, cause one crack, the dam breaks." Fox Network never forgot the fact that Dave had stood up in front of a network as powerful as them, and even years later, people associated with the network keep bringing him up and maligning his name. He spoke against the racist remarks of Candace Owens, who is an author and talk show host and is associated with Fox Network. Candace had brought up the death of George Floyd and asked why he was made into a hero. Despite being a black person herself, Candace continued to be racist, and Dave was not having it, so he responded to her. "We didn't choose him, you did. They killed him and that wasn't right, so he's the guy. We're not desperate for heroes in the black community. Any expletive that survives this nightmare is my goddamn hero." Another Fox News host openly announced how racist she was by asking LeBron James to shut up and dribble. This made Chappelle angry, and he responded. "She told one of Ohio's greatest residents to shut up and dribble. I'll tell you something about LeBron James. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated when he was 17 years old and exceeded every expectation they had of him. My friend is the best at something, and she's not the best at anything. She's just a regular white woman with a platform." The internet is also angry at the blatant racism of Fox News that is still going on till date. One person tweeted, "I know it's disgusting how blatantly Fox promotes racism, white supremacy, and insurrection without apologizing. Fox Network should be banned from broadcasting. They are trying to create a civil war where their actions are criminal." Comedy Central wanting to slave Dave Chappelle. Comedy Central was once the biggest platform for comedians and budding artists. The popular network was famous for its hilarious show and its new and emerging comedians. In the 2000s, the platform struck gold when they landed a contract with none other than Dave Chappelle. The show became so famous that suddenly Dave was a household name all over America, and Comedy Central was the most popular channel for people to tune in. The Chappelle Show was a huge hit, thanks to Dave's comedic genius and the perfect delivery of the cast. In just 3 seasons and 28 episodes, Chappelle's show was able to establish a lasting legacy on television. Fans all over the world still talk about the show and how much they loved it. One such fan wrote, "We had something special when the Chappelle Show was on the air." Dave thought that after the Fox fiasco, Comedy Central was going to be his safe haven, a place where he can freely express himself and not have to worry about bigotry and racism. This was his chance to give back to his black community. He wanted his work to be something that black people could be proud of. He spoke about how important this was to him on The Oprah Show.
I don't want black people to be disappointed in me for putting that out there.
No, you didn't want to be disappointed in yourself.
Dave wanted to make sure that he involved his community in this show. He wanted to invite black people, black artists, and musicians to the show to make up for the opportunities that the racist Hollywood executives don't give them. But unfortunately, this was also a dream that never materialized. Comedy Central was never the haven Dave had believed it to be.
I believe that they gave me a raw deal because this industry is a monster.
The network was just another money-hungry organization that couldn't care less about black people. They constantly urged Dave to make safer content, easier, safer jokes that wouldn't cause any reaction or change. Comedy Central started to dictate what Dave could and couldn't talk about on his show, and once again, his freedom was in jeopardy.
We'd have all these arguments. Dave got cut the poop joke, and there was a lot of discussion about we know what our audience wants. I was like, yeah, whatever.
Asking him to stay away from all the important and difficult conversations such as slavery and racism never worked because the audience never liked the half-hearted jokes anyway. Dave recalls that whenever he surrendered to the pressure of the network, people never liked the work.
They were wrong 100% of the time, as far as what people would like.
Okay.
Dave could never settle for this, as for him, artistic freedom is the most important thing for an artist. He talked about this once and said, "The more you say I can't say something, the more urgent it is for me to say it. It has nothing to do with what you're saying I can't say. It has everything to do with my right, my freedom of artistic expression that is valuable to me, that is not separate from me. It's worth protecting for me, and it's worth protecting for everyone else who endeavors in our noble profession." Dave knew that his audience were smart people who understood the intricacies of race and bigotry, but Comedy Central had other plans. They didn't want to upset the bigots or the racists.
I was doing sketches that were funny, but socially irresponsible. I felt like I was deliberately being encouraged.
But Dave could not accept this. This went against everything he believed in as an artist and performer. Chappelle spoke about his lack of freedom of speech in an interview and said, "Art is a powerful commodity. An artist, if you're good at it, should never behave as a commodity. My biggest gripe with this whole controversy with The Closer is that you cannot report on an artist's work and remove artistic nuance from his words. It would be like if you were reading a newspaper and they say, 'Man shot in the face by a 6-foot rabbit expected to survive,' and they never tell you it's a Bugs Bunny cartoon." Comedy Central not only limited his freedom of speech, they even ripped him off. The network refused to pay him the money he was owed.
I made a lot of money for Chappelle's show. When I left that show, I never got paid.
When Comedy Central offered Dave $50 million for a third season, he refused. Even after Dave refused the offer, Comedy Central wouldn't just let this pass. In fact, they came after him and tried to destroy his reputation. He talked about this many years later in his comedy special. "If you quit a show like Chappelle's show, I don't know if you know what happens to you professionally, but I'll tell you what doesn't happen. They don't just say, 'Well, good luck in your future endeavors.' With that media, they beat me up. With their power, they tried to make me behave. It takes a strong person to stand out in the cold like that." When Dave realized that Comedy Central had done more harm to him than even Fox Network had, he was heartbroken, but not hopeless. So he came to his community to ask for help.
I said, I'm going to my real boss, and I came to you because I know where my power lies.
Dave Chappelle stood up for himself. He asked people to stop watching The Chappelle Show because he wasn't getting any compensation for his work. All the profit, all the money was going into the pockets of the industry elites. But the people stood by Chappelle, and just like that, the show was useless without his fans streaming it.
And when you stopped watching it, they called me, and I got my name back.
With the help of his fans and his community, Dave Chappelle managed to bring an industry giant to its feet, realizing that they were losing not just money, but also its credibility and good name. Comedy Central gave Dave what he was owed, but Dave had naively forgotten that this wasn't the end of the fight. His enemy was much bigger than a single network, and the reality was about to hit him hard.
And I got my name back, and I got my license back, and I got my show back, and they paid me millions of dollars.
How Hollywood dominates black artists. Dave realized how much harm the industry giants were doing to black artists and performers. Racism was, and still is, a rampant problem in Hollywood, and all the big networks and media houses profit off of it. He spoke about this in his special and said,
"Why don't you just do Chappelle's show at another network?" Yeah. And why doesn't a slave run from one plantation to another plantation because the master over there might be nicer?
Dave, with the support of his fans, managed to avoid the enslavement that so many of his fellow black artists have had to go through. He thanked his fans for always supporting him and said,
"I couldn't thank you enough. You have kept me free. I have not had to do what so many of my colleagues have to do because of you."
Dave managed to avoid the fate that so many black artists walk into right at the start of their careers. The industry giants make sure they manipulate and enslave young emerging performers when they are still naive and unaware. In his special show, Chappelle talked about how the contracts are purposefully made so difficult that people don't even realize what they are signing up for.
It's so complicated, in fact, that when you're a kid like me, you have to hire somebody to tell you what that means.
Hollywood isn't run by the likes of Dave Chappelle. Despite his successful shows and his huge fandom, he was just a pawn in the hands of the Hollywood elite, and once he started to rebel against the system, the elite pushed him down and ruined his mental health, as well as public image. He talked about this bizarre time and stressful time in his life on The Oprah Show.
The whole time, they're trying to convince me I'm insane. They were trying to get me to take psychotic medication.
This was consistent with what Hollywood does to so many black artists. There are multiple examples of Hollywood executives trying to ruin black artists' careers and reputation by questioning their mental health. Look at how eerily similar Kanye West's story gets after he too stood up for his rights.
I was exhausted, they wrongly diagnosed me, and they when I asked them how much lithium did you want to put me on exactly, it took them 4 days to answer because they were embarrassed about the amount, right?
Dave realized this before the executives had the chance to do the same to him. He even talked about it openly at The Oprah Show.
Mariah Carey made a $100 million deal, and 3 months later, she's all of a sudden mysteriously crazy.
It has to be a wild coincidence that anyone who seems to start making money from their talent seems to be destroyed immediately, just like Martin Lawrence.
Martin Lawrence punches through and he's waving a gun on the street screaming, "They're trying to kill me."
How everyone that happens to get successful overnight gets called insane. Chappelle was called all sorts of things, and his credibility was put under question.
People were saying, though, that you were on drugs, you lost your mind, you went into a mental institution. What is true, what is not?
Not on drugs.
Dave was robbed of not just his mental peace, but also huge amounts of money. These executives never paid him the money he was owed, which he later recalled in one of his shows.
People think I made a lot of money for Chappelle's show. When I left that show, I never got paid. They didn't have to pay me because I signed the contract.
It was clear that the giants of the industry were after him for daring to stand up against them. But who really owns the entertainment industry and the media? And are they owned by the same people? Evil behind the show business. Dave Chappelle thought he was fighting against just one evil company in the industry, but the truth couldn't have been farther from it. Comedy Central was just a part of a much bigger problem. He spoke about this in his special and said,
"Why don't you just do Chappelle's show at another network?" Yeah. And why doesn't a slave run from one plantation to another plantation because the master over there might be nicer?
Comedy Central wasn't just any small network. In fact, it was owned by one of the biggest names in the industry, Paramount. Evidence suggests that Paramount Network is one of the most influential names in the entertainment industry, as they own countless companies and channels. Dave had taken up a fight not just against Comedy Central, but also some of the most powerful people in the world. Paramount is one of the biggest entertainment industries in America and now owns MTV, Comedy Central, CBS, BET, Black Focus Channel, Nickelodeon, and so many other media channels. Paramount isn't free of controversies itself. The founder of Paramount, Mickey Rothstein, was close with the Jewish gambling boss Harry "Doc" Sagansky, who invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in Mickey's expanding business organization. And to remove all traces of his dark past, in 1940, Mickey changed the family name to Redstone, but was less Jewish sounding and wouldn't make people wonder if he was related to the well-known Jewish America gambling boss Arnold Rothstein. People who knew Redstone since his childhood couldn't even recognize the monster he became when he joined the industry. One person said, "Those of us who knew Sumner when he was a young schlepper trying to survive as a film exhibitor would never have imagined his evolution into a corporate monster," comments one former associate. Comedy Central is owned by this organization that can hardly keep up with its own controversies. A book called Unscripted delved deep into the controversial world of Paramount. The founder Rothstein is involved in so many scandals and property disputes, and the author of the book has detailed them all. The book explains that dozens of trials are reported over financial conflicts, abusive dismissals, and sexual. The biggest and most powerful family in the world is plagued by its own ghosts. Even now, Redstone's family is in the midst of an ugly battle over who takes over the billion-dollar empire. Redstone's daughter Sherry has taken over the business and thrown out everyone who might come in her way. Even Redstone's partner has taken to court to fight for her place. She claimed that Sherry Redstone was estranged from her father and pushed herser, out of his Beverly Hills home to take over his life and to then use that dominion to take over CBS and Viacom. According to the author, the Paramount clan leaves one absolutely stunned by the scale of sexual violence. The scandals at Paramount started with the casting couch, and then everything else followed. Luxury prostitutes, madams, and quick on the heels sexual and ultimately for a company such as this, ripping an artist off doesn't seem like a moral dilemma at all. Well, all in all, Dave Chappelle is an exception in the dirty Hollywood business. The comedian not only managed to stay true to his values, but also managed to bring a name as big as Comedy Central to its knees. All of this was possible only with the support of his fans and the black community. If Dave hadn't fought for his rights and stood firm on his truth, he too would have been ripped off by the Hollywood elites like many black artists before him. But his fight for his rights, and the rights of all black artists, is far from over. Comedy Central was only a pawn in the bigger game, and the real enemies are still out there, controlling the whole entertainment industry. Dave has come clean about the horrors that perpetrate the industry. Oftentimes, the truth is even more horrible than fiction, and Hollywood is no less than a nightmare itself.